Three economic calculations changed everything I thought I knew about monetary sovereignty: $850 billion, 43 minutes, and 67%. In exactly 43 minutes, Vladimir Putin didn't just break NATO's financial resolve. He broke something far more fundamental: the alliance's belief in their own economic independence. I was monitoring secure channels at the Federal Reserve when the encrypted transmission arrived at 11:17 Eastern Time. What I witnessed through those communications will haunt Western central bankers for decades. The Fed chair sitting across from me during our emergency video conference, a woman who'd managed monetary policy through 3 global crises, started visibly shaking. Not from fear of military conflict, but from the realization that everything we thought we knew about financial sovereignty had just become obsolete. 43 minutes later, NATO's entire economic foundation was permanently compromised. This isn't the story of sanctions delayed or aid packages reconsidered. This is the story of watching the most powerful financial alliance in human history discover that their monetary independence was always an illusion, and Putin just revealed the puppet strings. I've studied institutional economic collapse for 4 decades. I've watched currencies crumble and financial systems fail, but I've never seen anything like the psychological devastation that rippled through Western central banks starting at 11:17 yesterday. Putin didn't threaten economic warfare, he didn't impose new sanctions or manipulate energy prices. He did something infinitely more terrifying from an economist's perspective. He revealed his new financial doctrine, and it made every Western monetary policy worthless overnight. Let me walk you through the 43 minutes that ended Western economic dominance. At 11:17, Putin's message reached the Federal Reserve through diplomatic channels that bypassed every financial intelligence network on Earth. The message was 7 pages of economic analysis. It contained market manipulation capabilities that shouldn't exist, currency intervention timelines that defied economic physics, and targeting protocols that turned NATO's fiscal assumptions into deadly mathematical illusions. By 11:23, emergency calls were flooding central banks across the Western alliance. By 11:31, evacuation procedures for critical financial data were being quietly activated. By 11:45, alliance members were secretly negotiating separate economic agreements with Moscow, and by 12 o'clock, exactly 43 minutes after Putin's message arrived, NATO, as a credible financial force, had ceased to exist. Here's what nobody's telling you about those 43 minutes. Putin's new doctrine isn't about imposing more sanctions or manipulating more markets. It's about making Western financial decision-making irrelevant by controlling the economic systems those decisions depend upon. His message contained detailed intelligence on every Western monetary contingency plan, every inflation scenario, and every fiscal policy the alliance thought was confidential. More terrifyingly, it contained counter-strategies that eliminated the West's ability to respond economically to any of them. The Federal Reserve's response was immediate and devastating. Within minutes of reading Putin's doctrine, the Fed chair ordered stress monitoring for all regional bank presidents. Financial sector hospital admissions in Washington, D.C. spiked 400% in the hour following the message's arrival. Anti-anxiety medication prescriptions for central bank officials increased 600% by day's end. This isn't bureaucratic stress. This is existential economic terror in its purest form. Because Putin's doctrine revealed something that shattered every assumption about monetary independence. Western financial response protocols had been compromised for years. Every interest rate decision, every quantitative easing program, every currency intervention was known to Moscow in real time. The West's monetary arsenal hadn't been protecting their economies. It had been a loaded economic weapon pointed at their own financial systems, with Putin holding the trigger. Intelligence sources report that the Federal Reserve Chair has privately circulated an assessment titled Complete Monetary Failure. The document, classified at levels requiring Treasury Secretary approval to access, concludes that any Western financial action has zero probability of success because every move is anticipated, countered, and neutralized before central bankers can even finish calculating the economic models. The assessment includes projections that should terrify every person in the Western Hemisphere. Putin's new doctrine allows him to selectively disable Western monetary responses in specific economic regions while maintaining full financial strike capability against others. This means he can attack Western economies while guaranteeing that their central bank allies cannot retaliate without triggering the destruction of their own financial systems. Putin understood something Western economists never grasped. Modern economic warfare isn't about who controls more resources. It's about who controls the systems that measure and distribute those resources. While Western leaders calculated inflation targets and employment metrics, he was infiltrating the mathematical models that make those calculations possible. The asymmetry isn't just staggering, it's absolute from an economic perspective. This is why Western counter-strategy doesn't exist in any meaningful sense. You cannot defend against an economic enemy who knows your monetary policy better than you do. You cannot deter someone who controls your deterrent mechanisms. You cannot negotiate economic terms with someone who wrote your negotiating algorithms before you even knew you needed them. European central banks aren't just fracturing under this pressure, they're mathematically dissolving. The European Central Bank has quietly activated succession protocols for monetary union membership. The Bank of England has begun moving critical operations out of London. The Bank of Japan is reportedly conducting viability assessments for independent monetary policy that bypass Western coordination entirely. But the most revealing indicator of Western financial collapse is what economic families are doing privately. Currency hedging for central bank families has increased 2,000% in the last 24 hours. Private financial consultants are refusing deployment to European institutions. Economics graduate program enrollments dropped 80% in the hours following Putin's revelation. Your financial security just became directly relevant to geopolitical calculations. And that's not hyperbole, it's mathematical reality based on the new economic doctrine Putin revealed. Russian monetary doctrine now operates on the principle that Western financial systems are Russian economic assets that happen to be managed by Western institutions. Every Federal Reserve interest rate decision operates on models that Moscow can influence. Every European Central Bank quantitative easing program runs on algorithms that Putin's economic intelligence helped design. Every major Western financial institution operates on software systems that contain Russian analytical backdoors. The alliance that once managed global economics has discovered it's been managing a system controlled by the Kremlin. Every monetary policy NATO countries implemented taught Russia how to manipulate Western economies. Every financial crisis response revealed Western weaknesses that Moscow immediately exploited. Every technological advancement in economic modeling was simultaneously shared with Russian financial intelligence. This is economic psychological warfare evolved beyond traditional recognition. Putin isn't trying to defeat Western economies through traditional means. He's proving that Western economies defeated themselves decades ago through systemic dependencies they never recognized. Every delayed economic response now demonstrates Russian financial omniscience. Every restricted monetary capability reveals Western mathematical helplessness. Every cancelled international economic agreement proves alliance economic irrelevance. Meanwhile, leaked Federal Reserve assessments reveal the depth of institutional panic spreading through the American financial establishment. Regional bank presidents are recommending immediate strategic withdrawal from international monetary positions. Treasury agencies are warning of cascading compromise effects that make conventional economic policy impossible. Financial contractors are invoking force majeure clauses to cancel agreements worth hundreds of billions of dollars. The monetary alliance that rebuilt global finance from post-war devastation has discovered that Putin has been building on those foundations for decades, and the economic structure was always designed to serve Russian interests. The institutions that guaranteed financial stability for generations are learning that they've been guaranteeing Russian economic victory instead. The monetary umbrella that protected democratic capitalism has become the financial shadow that protects Russian economic hegemony. China isn't just watching these economic developments, they're implementing similar strategies. Beijing's financial strategists are reportedly adapting Putin's doctrine for use against Taiwan's economy, knowing that American economic guarantees are now negotiable in real time through systems Moscow influences. Every Western financial hesitation provides proof that U.S. monetary commitments are conditional on factors Washington no longer controls. We're not witnessing the controlled demolition of the post-Cold War economic order. We're witnessing the revelation that it was financially demolished decades ago, and we've been operating in the economic ruins without understanding the mathematical reality. Putin hasn't destroyed Western economies through traditional financial warfare. He's revealed that Western economies destroyed their own independence through trust misplaced in systems he designed from the beginning. The economic psychological warfare is working because the threat isn't future, it's historical. Putin isn't threatening to penetrate Western financial defenses. He's revealing that Western monetary defenses have been Russian economic assets since their mathematical inception. Alliance members aren't choosing between economic resistance and financial surrender. They're choosing between acknowledging economic defeat or continuing to operate under the illusion of monetary independence while serving Russian financial interests. This realization is spreading through allied financial capitals faster than any market crash could propagate. If Western monetary systems serve Russian economic interests, can conventional fiscal policies function independently? If alliance financial communications are compromised, can monetary coordination exist? If economic planning is transparent to Russian analysts, what financial strategy remains mathematically possible? Putin's new doctrine forces Western economies to confront a question that has no economically acceptable answer. How do you conduct monetary policy when your adversary controls your financial weapons, knows your economic plans, and designs the mathematical models your policies depend upon? Western economic collapse in 43 minutes happened because there is no answer to that question. There never was from a purely mathematical standpoint. The underground economic bunkers designed for Congress are being prepared not for financial attack, but for the moment when American leadership realizes that financial attack is unnecessary. Putin can achieve complete economic victory without manipulating a single market because he's been manipulating all markets through the systems Western economists built and trusted. This is the moment economic historians will mark as the end, not just of Western monetary dominance, but of the illusion that Western financial systems were ever independent, mathematical entities. Putin didn't paralyze Western economies in 43 minutes. He revealed that Western monetary systems had been mathematically paralyzed for decades, and 43 minutes was simply how long it took for economic reality to penetrate the West's collective financial delusion. The monetary policies that were supposed to protect democratic capitalism have become instruments of Russian economic control. The financial alliance built to project economic strength has become a projection of Russian monetary power. In 43 minutes, Vladimir Putin proved that in the modern economic era, the side that controls the enemy's financial calculation systems controls the enemy's entire economy. Western central banks learned they weren't making their own monetary decisions. And once that mathematical realization becomes undeniable, every other economic calculation becomes irrelevant to the question of who actually controls global financial policy. The age of Western economic supremacy didn't end with financial defeat. It ended with the discovery that financial defeat had occurred decades ago, and monetary supremacy was always a mathematical illusion maintained by Russian economic intelligence for strategic convenience. Putin didn't break Western economies. He simply stopped pretending that Western financial independence had ever been mathematically real. What terrifies me most about Putin's economic doctrine isn't the immediate monetary crisis. It's the mathematical precision with which he's been conducting this financial infiltration for decades, while Western economists congratulated themselves on their analytical sophistication. I've spent 40 years studying economic bubbles, currency crises, and institutional collapses. But this isn't a traditional financial crisis. It's the revelation that Western monetary policy has been a Russian economic operation disguised as independent decision-making. The numbers buried in Putin's doctrine tell a story that should shake every Western economist. Current Western monetary responses cost 300% more to implement than equivalent Russian counter-strategies cost to neutralize. That's not accidental inefficiency, that's systematic economic exploitation designed to bankrupt Western central banks through their own policy mechanisms. 3 weeks after reviewing the classified Federal Reserve analysis, I received encrypted communications from contacts at central banks across 5 continents. The same mathematical reality everywhere. Internal projections showing current monetary sovereignty is economically impossible to maintain against adversaries who control the calculation systems underlying policy decisions. The European Central Bank's classified assessment projects Western monetary independence ending within 18 months, purely through mathematical constraints, regardless of political decisions. Their models show Russian financial influence growing exponentially, while Western policy effectiveness approaches zero. But here's the calculation that keeps me awake. China's equivalent financial control systems cost 70% less to develop than Western defensive measures cost to implement. Beijing isn't just studying Putin's economic doctrine. They're improving it through competitive efficiency analysis that makes Western financial responses increasingly pointless. Putin's revelation represents the emergence of economic warfare through mathematical superiority rather than resource manipulation. Victory goes not to whoever controls more wealth, but to whoever controls the systems that measure, calculate, and distribute wealth across global markets. The age of Western financial dominance is ending not through dramatic market crashes, but through the quiet discovery that dominance was always a computational illusion maintained by adversaries who designed the mathematics Western economists trusted.